Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the first ever edition of the After Stangs Show. I'm Billy Embody, joined by SMU outside linebacker, defensive end,
Yeah,
Master.
I remember saying that. You're right.
We're going to jump right in here, guys. I appreciate you guys listening in on YouTube right now. This will be available on all our platforms after the show. We are live at Shug's Bagels in Mockingbird Plaza, so you can listen to us every home game after the fact. It's 11 kickoff. It's a late night game. You can come to Shug's after hours and catch us here. So we appreciate you guys listening wherever you're catching this right now. So so swing by tonight and pick up a little late night rub. So let's get right into it. Nelson, you guys were able to dispatch Louisiana Tech 38-14. One of the sacks in the game. I felt like this was kind of the coming out party for this defense.
I mean, yeah, everybody was really excited, really to get the first game going, and it was really about putting our fundamentals together. And we had a game plan and we executed it perfectly. And it was the results show. We hit everything on the dime.
And when it comes to SMU, that defense that you guys revamped in the offseason were able to put it all together in this game. What was your mindset coming in to this game?
Mindset was first individually is really get my technique right. Really encouraged my brothers next to me, and all together we just really had to communicate on the field and just stop the run.
For me, as I watch the game unfold, you guys with this defensive rotation that you now have, the depth that you guys have going into this season, and just how did it feel actually putting it into game action now?
Yeah, more depth. Me, I have Isaiah Smith and Cam Robinson. We're all elite rushers, so if I have skill, the D line, they really they have it all. I mean, they have the technique, they got the strength, the speed, mobility, and they're all a dominant force. So I believe they all can get it done.
And when you guys are out there against the Louisiana Tech team that has plenty of firepower with a guy like Smoke Harris, when you saw that on tape, what were you guys able to see that you guys could attack early on?
It was really the fact that we had a whole lot of speed. We had a lot of talent on our side, and it was exploiting what we knew, exploit our skills, and just displaying exactly what we were meant to do while we were taken into it.
Want to talk a little bit about him? He gets the start. He comes from a big time program in Texas, but he rolls early. What did you see from him on campus that he was able to get multiple sacks of his own?
Yeah. Really starting out in practice, he's a fast guy. He's always, if he's not making the play, he's always nearby. And on that field, once I seen him strike through the hole and just get the sack, I was just like, it might be his game.
To come away with a win week one is great, but to do it after the momentum that you guys got from the ACC invite, was that something you guys talked about even behind the scenes going into this one? Hey, we've got to keep this going. We can't let that impact us.
That's exactly what it was. You one game at a time. That's a futuristic aspect. So we just got to dial into what we have now and just focus on our goals.
And now that you guys have that ACC, I know you're a senior. You're not going to be able to play in this one. What does that mean from the school, from your perspective?
This school has a history of success, and it never dialed down. So I'm pretty proud of the program on achieving this huge milestone. And I'm not going to be there, but all my brothers that are right behind me, I can't wait to see what they do in the future, and I'm wanting to see what they really bring to all these other schools.
Preston Stone and what he was able to do in this this game, managing the offense. What did you see from him in his preparation and just him pushing the right buttons on the offense?
It's really his bonding skills with them. Like he executes each aspect of the wideouts, the O linemen, running backs. He dials into each one of them so they can do their job. And it's really him having the best ball placement. Just being there at the right time because they're gonna get the job done because he sets them to a line like that.
You guys have gone through fall camp. It's in the books. What was it like facing that offense in fall camp and playing against a guy like Jalen Knight?
Man.
But it's supposed to play like him. LJ Johnson goes off. Did y'all meet your expectations that you've seen them out there on the field?
They did pretty good. They were moving fast, but we got a whole lot of fuel left in that tank. Them players are really great. Jalen, quick, fast. I would say, they really have a lot of skill, a lot of structure built in their offense, and I'm ready to see what they can do next week.
You guys to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That's a game that you guys probably have circled off in a little piece of the offseason, right? Do you guys think like that as players at all?
I mean, you got to think about the big games, but you really you can do what you are set to do. We do our best to game plan what we can, but it's really about the execution and really like mentally being bought in.
When it comes to what you guys do in an environment like how much does playing in Maryland last year help you guys?
The atmosphere was pretty great. Their fans, they hyped them up, but they also hyped us up. So really having a great atmosphere it'll bring the communication out. It'll bring the structure that if we're lacking any, it'll bring it out. Really being persistent and consistent at our job. So we don't have really much time for mistakes and gaps. So we got to do the best we can.
Was there anything you noticed on the field today that right away you get done with this one that you could say we got to put that? So.
Defense, offense wise, or just defense wise?
It's a pretty good showing.
It is a hard question. I mean, man, there are some gaps that we really could narrow down on the front line, but we're pretty solid at that. I would say hinging down the secondary to like really a no-fly zone. But other than that, I feel like we're pretty good, solid.
Who surprised you this week, just overall? Anyone that really you said he stepped
up? Honestly, I feel like we all stepped up. I don't really see an individual really prospering like that. Yeah, we all did our jobs. We all were in the backfield. They were making plays when they needed to be made. Yeah, I can't think of one. I guess we're all great.
Hey, 1-0 undefeated.
Yeah.
Still on that side of things. When you look at it this season, how excited are you for this last ride for yourself? And to maybe you don't want to look ahead, but there's a lot, with this team that says you guys could go pretty far this year.
Yeah. And I really see that too. But in my head, I'm really taking it one game at a time. I'm trying to enjoy the moment. This is my last ride. I'm trying to enjoy it with my brothers, connect with them more. And it's really doing better in practice, doing the small things better so it can just end up in the game being really successful. And, that's what I really feel about the defense right now. Yeah.
Well, Nelson Paul, thanks a lot. Get to kick this off with a fellow Florida native. So always good to chat with the Sunshine State.
Yeah.
So,
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, and appreciate it. We'll maybe catch you later this year.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yep. Anytime. Thanks a lot. There he is, Nelson Paul. I'll take that from you if you want, and you can enjoy the rest of your Saturday. 11 a.m. kicks.
Can't wait.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Nelson. Have a good one.
So there he is, Nelson Paul, heading off now to enjoy the rest of his Saturday. This was a early 11 a.m. kick for SMU, and so appreciate him taking some time after the game to come by and chat with us. I was told a little technical difficulties on my end for me, so now I put the headset on, so hopefully you guys can hear me a little bit more as we're coming at you guys live from Shug's Bagels in Mockingbird Plaza. And I think I look at this game and what SMU was able to do from just an overall control perspective. They weren't allowing Louisiana Tech to kick the door in a little bit or, come back and claw their way in. This was a game that I think the defense really stood out to me in a big way because of that. They were able to take control. They were able to really just completely dominate a Louisiana Tech passing attack that has Hank Bachmeier, one of the more experienced transfer quarterbacks that was out there in the market. They had Smoke Harris, who came off a 150-yard performance in week 0 against FIU, but he was bottled up. His yards after the catch, very limited on Saturday. So for SMU to do that, that really stood out. Nelson Paul had a sack. Corey Roberson had a sack. Elijah Roberts had a half sack. Alex Kilgore had 2 sacks as well. So SMU's new look defensive front really stood out to me, caught my eye, and they were able to, really get that done up front. So Rhett Lashley does know there are some things to clean up, and for SMU, they're going to have to do that quick as they head to Norman next week.
I don't know. The concern would be when I go back and look at why. Right. So after I see why, then I'll know how concerned it should be. And I'll be honest, I was really boring and stubborn today. Game 1, we did it last year against North Texas too. Like, you can be too crazy and too complicated. You get all this time and it's like, man, game 1, new starting quarterback, but not that he's not experienced, but just all the new guys. Like, we got new guys all over the place on offense. And if you try to do too much, that's where sometimes you don't execute very well. We didn't bust a lot. I know I mentioned the one on the first drive. That's like the only one in my head I can really think about. So we knew what to do. We played fast. Maybe we got to execute better, or maybe I got to give them better play calls. It may be a combination of both. We'll go back and see. I mean, you never want to not pick up 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, those kind of things. So that, I don't know about concerning, but it's got to get fixed.
There he is, the first of a lot of reaction to come into the After Stangs Show live from Shug's After Hours. We're going to be here all season long for these home games. Whenever SMU kicks off at home, we'll be right here at Shug's Bagels in Mockingbird Plaza covering the game afterwards. So we'll get done with post-game, as you heard from Rhett Lashley right there. We've got some Alex Kilgore and Preston Stone reaction to game 1 as well that we'll get to. But look, I think everybody watching the SMU football team going into this one, a lot of them were wondering how would all of this come together for this team with so many new faces. 25 transfers were added to the team this year. And for SMU's offense, it wasn't perfect. They didn't come out necessarily firing on all cylinders. But as Preston Stone said after the game, they cleaned things up, they got some momentum, and they got rolling.
Well, that one play touchdown to Jordan was a huge momentum swing for us. We came out the first 2 drives and really felt like we were rolling and clicking. And then, we converted twice on 3rd down. They both got called back. So it was just unfortunate turn of events. And then Jordan really gave us the spark that we needed.
And for Preston Stone, he goes out in his first career start at Ford Stadium. He started last year against Tulsa, but this year he got that first career start at Ford. He finishes off his first start in Ford, 23 of 37 for 248 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, wasn't sacked, and he was also able to add 3 carries for 11 yards. I think watching Preston Stone today in this game, you got a sense for that ability to extend plays, kind of run around and not necessarily, have a situation where you're taking a shot and trying to force something. He had an early throw down the field that was into triple coverage, but it was 3rd down. He settled in really well, I felt, later in the game. Rhett Lashley commented that he was playing like they wanted him to, and just be Preston. Don't try to be somebody you're not. I felt like watching this offense, things really clicked right after that Jordan Hudson long touchdown pass, which is why SMU brought him in from TCU, the former 5-star transfer. He has a 67-yard touchdown that started the scoring for SMU. From there, it was kind of a surprise. You were standing there watching the press box if you were me, and Louisiana Tech takes over. They get the ball, and Oklahoma transfer Corey Roberson, in his first action since the 2021 season, bats a ball down, intercepts it, and takes it back for a 16-yard interception return for a touchdown off Hank Bachmeier. SMU went up 14-0. They then were able to get the ball back. They get a Colin Rogers field goal as SMU wasn't able to get it done in the red zone. But for SMU, this is now a game where you can kind of build off of some of the things that they did well here and there throughout the contest. And one transfer, I think, and this is a team littered with them that really stood out to me, is LJ Johnson. And if you've been watching our On the Pony Express podcast or are a subscriber to ontheponyexpress.com, you can join for just $1 for your first month or 50% off your first annual subscription. We've been talking about LJ Johnson since the spring because he came on so well for SMU in the spring, and he had a great spring game. He followed that up with a strong fall camp. And I think for LJ Johnson to come out with 14 carries, 128 yards, including a long of 67, as well as a touchdown, that was good to see. And he complimented Jalen Knighton really, really well. I was giving a thumbs up. Nelson Paul was checking on our audio outside. We've got a speaker set up out here. So once after hours does get going at 6 p.m. and beyond for some of these games that are later, we'll be having a live broadcast out here. We're going to try to get a way to get our questions live from people who are maybe having a bagel out here or whatever. But LJ Johnson, Jalen Knighton complimented each other really well. Jalen Knighton comes in as the Miami transfer, 17 carries, 66 yards, and really was able to kind of chip away at that defense with his physical style of running. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's able to really lower his shoulder, and despite his helmet popping off multiple times in the game, you can tell he has that edge. And I noticed that from some of the Miami guys. Jordan Miller held it down in the middle on defense. Elijah Roberts, he showed flashes of what he can do on the edge. Romello Brinson, Keyshawn Smith, they all kind of showed a little bit of that swagger that maybe this team needed. And I think it started with Jalen Knighton today. So he had a really, really good performance. I felt like it was just kind of tough sledding for him at times. His long run of the day was for 12 yards. So that's something where SMU is going to work on cleaning up and trying to get him a little bit more involved with explosive plays for sure. But he was able to also catch some passes as well from Preston Stone. So it was a good day in that regard, kind of getting those guys into the mix early for SMU. Jalen Knighton finished with 2 receptions for 6 yards. He would have had some room to run if he maybe would have gotten the ball a little quicker on a flat route, but it was not to be. So I think for SMU, they were able to manage the overall tough situation they were put in with the ACC in a way. You have that excitement from Friday. I mean, I can't imagine how you focus on a football game when players are thinking about Clemson and Florida State coming to Ford Stadium in 2024. You've got Louisiana Tech that barely beat FIU. They're coming in. SMU's at home, all those things. But they were able to circle the wagons and really kind of focus on that. And I think that was really important.
That's a concern. I mean, look, yesterday was a real positive distraction, but still, it was something that was dominating the news cycle and dominating the things here on our campus and in our city. And, I thought they did a really nice job of focusing on and being present. I mean, we know what that means for the future, but the present was today and this season. And I thought you can tell the way we came out and played in the first half, they did a nice job of not letting that kind of get in the way.
Obviously, it's very exciting news and something that that was very exciting for us to hear. But at the same time, it's not necessarily at the forefront of our mind. Our main priority, main focus is trying to do everything we can to bring this university the first championship it's had in 40 years. And we're in the AAC right now, so that's where our head's at right now. But obviously, that's something that we're all really excited about.
So SMU was able to focus, lock in, and get the win at home, 38-14 on Saturday against Louisiana Tech. And for those of you joining us now on our live stream, we are at Shug's Bagels in Mockingbird Plaza. They have Shug's after hours beginning at 6 p.m. So stop by for a bagel. We'll be long gone. They've got all sorts of good stuff that people can get. But because of the 11 a.m. kickoff, we're here all alone. But we do have a speaker outside, so if you were around, come say hi to me now, as Nelson Paul joined us earlier in the podcast. For SMU, looking at Alex Kilgore, and if you've been a longtime listener to the On the Pony Express podcast, we've been a big proponent of Alex Kilgore and what he's going to bring to SMU's defense. I made a comment to somebody, and I'm sorry to Alex for putting this on him already, but I think he's somebody that when we looked at him as a recruit, I was trying to put together this case that he should be a 4-star, and I'm a big believer of that. And the reason why is I just felt like with what he did at Katy Paytal, both sides of the ball, state champion, excellent student, and just has that frame that you can't teach and that athleticism that's really impressive. I felt like he was going to make an impact early. And honestly, it wouldn't be surprising for me to see him be the highest drafted SMU player in recent history on the defensive side of the ball. I'm that high on him long term. He's obviously going to be playing a ton of football in the ACC. And for Rhett Lashley, they're very high on his future as well.
Yeah, I think was it the first, second, third play somewhere in there? You got a sack. Yeah, Alex is a special freshman. I mean, we think he's going to have a great career here, and he can run. He's very instinctive. He just knows how to play the game, and I think he shot a gap there and made the play. And we think he's going to have not only a big year but a big career.
And for Alex Kilgore, I mean, he finishes up his day with 2 sacks, and he actually got a hit late in the game on Hank Bachmeier. So he probably should have had maybe one more pressure on there, but finishes with 3 total tackles. He had 2 sacks for 12 yards lost for Louisiana Tech. That's a terrific start for him. And for him to make his impact early, I think really helped him. And I actually asked him after the game, have you always been able to adjust quickly to either a rising competition, or have you been comfortable in tough situations early on? And here was his response.
Yes, I guess, especially from last year. But I can say Coach Crum, Ahmad, all those guys in the linebacker room we've all prepared well enough that it almost wasn't even like it was a game. You know, we've all prepared really good throughout the week and from fall camp, spring ball, and everything.
And I mentioned that Katy Paytal program in particular because they do have a lot of talented players that have come out of there. David Hicks, who's going to suit up for Oklahoma. He's a really talented football player that they're getting right off the jump. Texas A&M, and David Hicks, the defensive lineman who's a 5-star, and Damian Sanford were 2 of his teammates on that Katy Paytal defense. And Alex Kilgore, I saw Damian Sanford. I saw Alex Kilgore. I felt like Alex Kilgore was a higher upside guy. But one thing he'll tell you is that Katy Paytal program really prepared him for the next level. And he came in January, and his head was kind of swimming a little bit. But Scott Simons, the SMU defensive coordinator, and we've talked about this, wrote about it on the site. If you ever ask him about Alex Kilgore, he gets a little bit of a grin on his face because he knows how good he's going to be long term. But ultimately for Alex, him being able to step in is a product of that competition down there at that Katy area program.
Being around talent, because I think a lot of what people struggle with is competition. I wouldn't even call it competition, just hanging around a lot of talent around you, and just having David Hicks as a defensive lineman helping me out. Damian Sanford, we've always competed. When David Hicks came in, it was always us 3 practicing, doing moves, just creating things, anything that could help us improve our game to the next level. And it's kind of like this here.
So Alex Kilgore, definitely one of the players of the game for SMU in this case. Another thing I think that I took away from this one is watching the SMU secondary. I think they're a unit that has played with a little bit more of an edge now that they've added a guy like Jonathan McGill. He made a big hit early in the game. Charles Woods, he did get called for a pass interference penalty kind of right after SMU had not gotten a couple calls go their way that Rhett Lashley was kind of fuming about. But with Charles Woods, he had a pass breakup. He is one of the more athletic guys out there. You see that burst that he has when he goes to break up a pass. He had a really just excellent textbook breakup in this game. So he's kind of a game changer for SMU in the secondary because they haven't had a lockdown corner in quite some time. So I felt like the secondary was a positive for the most part. The job they did on Smoke Harris, who absolutely lit up FIU last week, his final stat line, 7 receptions for 47 yards with a long of 22, which means he caught 6 balls for 25 yards on the other receptions. He was targeted 10 times, and he only had 12 yards after the catch. Big note there as SMU was able to keep him in check. We are live at Shug's Bagels in Mockingbird Plaza. They open at 6 p.m. for Shug's after hours, so swing by then and get yourself a bagel. They've got great sandwiches, great staff here. Appreciate them for letting us stop in here each week for SMU home games and film this post-game show. When SMU is on the road, we're going to be doing this from the comforts of my home, so excited about that. Don't have to wait around for post-game. But for SMU, one of the things that I think that they've got to clean up heading into Norman next week is they have to clean up the kicking game. And Colin Rogers missed 2 of his 3 goal attempts. He did make a 34-yarder. He was perfect on extra points, but he missed a 49-yard field goal attempt, and he missed a 36-yard field goal attempt that clanked off the upright. And I think he's a guy that coming off of an injury he got, I think it was his back. He got that cleaned up in the offseason, didn't do much in the spring at all, went home, worked on his craft, was able to kind of focus in on that. For him, I think this is maybe something to keep an eye on just over the course of this season because, you know, he came into SMU and kickers are really hard to evaluate. You could be the number 1 kicker in the country. You can be the number 2 kicker in the country. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. But one thing that does take time sometimes is for these guys to hit their stride. But one thing that I think was a little bit more concerning than maybe I anticipated was, you know, the 2 kickoffs out of bounds. That's stuff that, you know, after the second one, Rhett Lashley took him aside. I was watching from the press box above, and he kind of had his arm around him, definitely talking to him, talking through some things. So going into next week, SMU can't leave points on the field. You know, that's an Oklahoma team that I hadn't gotten a chance to catch the final score of that one just yet. There it is, 73-0 with 66 of those 73 points coming in the first 3 quarters against Arkansas State. It is Arkansas State. I think they're going to be a bad football team this year, but you're going to need every bit of offensive output if you're SMU going into Norman. And this question comes from probation coach. Shout out to that era of SMU basketball. But he asked, what's the biggest takeaway? I think the kicking game is one that's really got to improve. I talked about Colin Rogers, but I felt like the punting game with Ryan Buchevsky was terrific. 3 punts, 153 yards with a long of 53. So really consistent there from him. I thought he really pinned Louisiana Tech back a little bit, which was important. But another thing, I think the red zone scoring chances, SMU does go 3 of 4, but one of those was a field goal attempt. And I think just there was some choppiness here and there that you don't necessarily love if you're SMU down in that area of the field. They tried a couple different things. I know they wore them down late in the game and were able to get that LJ Johnson 1-yard touchdown run. But all their other touchdowns did not come in the red zone, I don't believe. Let me see. Oh, no, Nolan Matthews-Harris caught a 9-yard touchdown and then the 34-yard field goal. So that is something that, you know, I feel like SMU early in the game, they weren't able to maybe do as well of. You know, the first 2 red zone possessions, they were forced to I believe they turned it over on downs, but they did kick a field goal. But then they came back, and that's when Nolan Matthews Harris caught that touchdown pass. And I think one of the things that I was impressed by is the tight ends. I think SMU involved them at a pretty good level to get Nolan Matthews Harris a look. Preston Stone had great touch on that pass, dropping it in there very well for that touchdown, a 9-yard touchdown. That's got to feel good if you're Nolan Matthews Harris, a guy that, has been banged up in the past and got healthy and needed to hit the reset on his kind of career here at SMU, because the Mustangs needed a second tight end that has a big frame to step up and really emerge. And I think that Nolan Matthews Harris was able to do that today. He got on the field a good bit, and RJ Maryland as well. 5 receptions, 58 yards, and a touchdown. And I think, one, you saw how talented he is with the catch that he had over a couple defenders. That one hung up in the air a little bit too long for my liking. I think that is probably intercepted against Oklahoma next week, but you can see the type of athlete he is. And he added about 15, 20 pounds in the offseason so that he could hold up a little bit better in run blocking. He's really been terrific in that regard. So the tight ends were a really big plus in terms of need to work on. And Rhett Lashley kind of talked about this a little bit post game as well, but we'll kind of save that for you guys. It's the full videos on our YouTube channel right now. But he said, he was stubborn, and he really, it sounded like he wasn't trying to show too much, because he referred back to the North Texas game last year where they were kind of vanilla. And honestly, I might have to go give that game thread a read on our message board, because he didn't want to show that much. But one thing I would counter and say is that they do have that jet flip sweep play, however you want to call it, in their playbook. And it really didn't do much for me this game. And I know it's game one, could be a timing thing, but there was opportunities for Jordan Curley and a couple others there to maybe pick up some yards and make some plays, but that wasn't able to happen. And I think for me, the jet sweep, if you're doing it, you're either trying to set something up, which Rhett Lashley could very well be doing for next week in Norman, give it the little, flip forward, fake flip forward, and Preston Stone drops back, and maybe you get some movement out of that defense of Oklahoma's. But, I think for me, some of the timing was just a little off here and there on some things for SMU, which will come. You have a program that, has a lot of new faces, new players. I know Preston Stone missed a back shoulder throw to I believe it was Romello Brinson on the sideline. But when you look at this team overall, there's things to clean up, and there's a couple penalties here and there. I think they had they ended up 6 penalties, 41 yards. But you also look at this game from the standpoint of, you got a couple of moments there where you got some help. Louisiana Tech on a punt has 12 guys on the field. Your drive continues. Louisiana Tech, they had I believe they had a personal foul, the face mask. It was on 3rd down play where they tackled Jake Bailey, and that was at the last second that happened. So they extended the drive, and I believe they ended up scoring after that. So it's a game that was. Somebody asked me on the board, and it was a great question. What'd you think? It was better, worse? I would say it's about what I expected offensively. And offensively, you had guys like PJ Williams, who rotated in at tackle and left guard. I think that left guard spot with Logan Parr, he had a good showing, but I still think it's maybe a little unsettled. And then they're just kind of working through some of their personnel packages. Stone Eby getting in the game as a H-back. That was something that Rhett Lashley said on his radio show. Hey, watch out for Stone Eby. And sure enough, he got some time in there. But I think to the play calling point for the offense, I felt like at times it was just a little too cute. Other than that, I loved it. I think you look at what they were able to do from a yards per play, and it kind of teetered off there at the end because they were trying to run the ball so much. So they weren't hitting explosives and things like that. But they finished 5.8 yards per play. I think early fourth quarter, maybe they were right at 6.5 yards per play, which would average out around top 15 overall for offenses around the country in 2022. So They ran the ball 43 times, I believe, which is really, really a good clip to run at. As Rhett Lashley said after the game, if you're running it that often, you are going to be winning the game because you're trying to win. You're trying to milk the clock a little bit. You're trying to control the overall flow of the game by running the football. And I felt like at times SMU dictated that tempo. When they wanted to run it 3 times and go 3 and out, they did that. But again, they got helped out with the 12 men on the field once they were ready to punt. So I think offensively there was a line that they were walking of not wanting to show too much, but also maybe being a little, too vanilla at times with their run game. But then in the pass game, I felt like it was too cute. A lot of rollouts, a lot of play action, those jet sweeps. So I think offensively, Rhett Lashley, he said he was stubborn after the game. So I think he knows he's got some things up in the old playbook for Oklahoma next week. That game, 5 p.m. Central Time on ESPN Plus. So we'll be there in Norman covering that one. If you're listening right now, we are at Shug's Bagels in Mockingbird Plaza. They do open at 6 p.m. for their after-hours service. So catch a bagel. You can get it with egg, bacon, cheese, whatever you want on it. They also have the spicy Shug, which I love. They also have great chicken cutlet sandwiches up there. I'm looking at it right now. That cutlet sounds so good. And back to SMU. But we're going to be here every home game broadcasting live, so be sure to join us for one of the night games. Prairie View A&M comes to town later this month. We'll be here. That'll be a 6 o'clock kick. So that should be a little fun. This could be a nice little atmosphere. If that game gets over by 10, we'll be out here probably around 10:30, 11 or so. So come check it out then. Probation coach gets the second question. Do I think SMU was vanilla on purpose to avoid giving OU game film? And Rhett Lashley basically answered that they were pretty vanilla overall. So, I really like that when a coach is honest about it. And, him comparing it to the North Texas game last year was important. But I'll tell you this as we get to closing this out for you guys. One thing that was not the same as last year was that SMU is now a member, or will be a member this summer, of the ACC. They announced that move on Friday. The conference approved them. Obviously, it was a big deal for this university. It's been such a long road back to prominence. And I talked to so many people on the Boulevard about SMU getting this opportunity to rejoin the power conference ranks. I guess we'll call it a Power Four, but Rhett Lashley and the leadership at SMU, which I'm sure just needled the heck out of some TCU fans, called it a top three conference in college football. Obviously, Big Ten and SEC right now are kind of leading the way, but I know that got a lot of people fired up yesterday when they said that. And for SMU, they were able to focus in and still have a lot of things that they can get better at. They can clean up. They weren't outside of, I would say, the kicking game. There wasn't anything that I sat there and said, "Ugh, that's tough." I will say, Louisiana Tech did do a good job on third downs. SMU was 7 of 18 overall on third downs. So that's something that I'd like to see a little bit better job at. But, for SMU, they were also 3 of 4 on fourth downs. So that's a good clip to be hitting there if you're SMU. With the move to the ACC, there was so much excitement on campus. A lot of people just talking to me about just how much it meant. Talked to some people that have been around a little bit. And I talked with Brad Cheeves, who's the VP of External Affairs for SMU on the Boulevard. And he just said he's never heard so much excitement around this school right now. It is comparable to when the Bush Library was brought to campus, quite honestly. But SMU being in the ACC is an absolute game changer for them. They're going to be able to capitalize on this both athletically and academically with how they bring in students, and also, of course, with money being brought in. I know the 9 years is a lot to forego, but that's why SMU has a lot of people that are ready to stroke that check so that they can make this happen. And they did. They were able to push it across the finish line. And one thing that I took away from today watching this game is, honestly, the student section. They were there pretty much on time, as much as you can be for an 11 a.m. game when you're trying to enjoy the Boulevard. And the stadium for the whiteout, which is obviously the first game of SMU, each SMU season at home, they'll white out the stadium. Rhett Lashley talked a lot about, one, why the whiteout is an advantage for SMU, but also what it meant to have that type of atmosphere in Ford Stadium. And while it wasn't a completely packed house, it was a great atmosphere for the team to go out and open their season with. And he said it's a small glimpse of what could come in the ACC.
I did. I mean, you see the student section when the game started, all 4 sections behind the visitors bench. It changes the feel. You can hear them chanting. Like, that's the atmosphere you want. Now, when you get up 31-0, they're excited about the Boulevard. So, I don't know what I would have thought in college. Who knows? And it's hot, but that first half was great. I mean, that's what we want. That's the atmosphere. I think you get a feel for how the stadium being closed in is going to be. I mean, we had a whiteout, and I get it. I got a lot of questions. Like, okay, our marketing team does a great job. The whiteout's for the fans. And I know we wore blue jerseys, but there's reasons for that. I mean, now sometimes you got to rely on the other team to let you switch jerseys. I'm not saying they didn't do that. But the other is if you're look at Penn State, they started whiteouts. They wear blue for their whiteouts. And the reason is you got everybody in the stands in white and the other team in white. Now your guys stand out to your QB better, right? There's a contrast there. Well, if you got everybody in the stands white and your dudes are running around in white, that's actually harder for you than the other QB. So, like, there's some stuff to it. So if anybody wants to be wondering why we wore blue jerseys, they can ask me. But the whole student section in white, they were loud. It was great, and I think that's what you're gonna see down the road here for a home environment.
It was pretty funny to hear him talk about how the whiteout actually helps them offensively, and that's why they wear the blue jerseys. I know that's something that has been talked about here and there through the years, so it's funny that he even addressed it. Couple quick notes as we close out. Kamar Wheaton was suspended for the first game, dating back to an academic deal in the summer where he missed some class. So Rhett Lashley and his staff kind of held him accountable for that. He was on the sidelines. I saw him down there, but he was not dressed out, but he was suspended for the game. Jaden Jones, who has a big club on his left hand and is still kind of recovering and is going to get that off at some point, did get some snaps today, so that was a good thing for SMU to get another edge player on the field. I think they look really deep at that position, so that's a nice takeaway when you have a guy like Nelson Paul, who was here earlier, a guy like Cam Robertson, who flashed a little bit. He's very strong. He's not as twitchy, maybe, coming off that edge. And then you've got Isaiah Smith and Jalen Samuels, and you added Jaden Jones, who's played a good bit of football too. So they've got some depth in that outside pass rusher spots where they like to bring them off the edge. So overall, it was a good first game. 38-14, can't argue with that. Scott Sanford asking a question, the early prediction for the OU game. I think I can't predict SMU to beat OU right now. And one thing, and I've said this before, is SMU hasn't been able to do it on the road against Power 5 opponents not named TCU. I think OU, where OU has been able to show that they have a little something maybe this year compared to last year. I know it's Arkansas State. I know it's a football team that is not really on their level at all. But they were able to go out there and win 73-0. That's a pretty convincing win for me. So I think OU comes away with it early on. I think this SMU team, and one thing, and I think Louisiana Tech showed this a little bit. I think FIU is that bad of a team in a sense, but I think Louisiana Tech kind of jumped up a little bit going into this game. I felt like they had moments here and there, but for SMU, their biggest jump is going to go from week 1 to week 2. They've played, they have things to work on now instead of, looking up the same practice footage of the SMU offense going against the SMU defense. Now they have some real takeaways to clean up, and they have plenty of time to do that. I mean, the day is still young on Saturday, but our coverage at Shug's Bagels is wrapping up here. But an early prediction for this OU game as we get out of here. I think right now I'll pick Oklahoma 38, SMU 28. I think that's probably where I'm at right now. I'm interested to see what the line is going to be when it comes out. But for SMU, this is a good first step. They've got some things to clean up. They've also got some positives to take away from this 38-14 win over Louisiana Tech. So, guys, reminder, subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com. $1 for your first month. We had tons of people sign up on Friday when the news dropped about the ACC. You could also subscribe for 50% off annual subscriptions as well. So join us for this football season as SMU plays out its final season in the AAC before moving on to the ACC. Going to drop some recruiting notes this week, as well as SMU now with that Power Conference invite is looking to flip some top targets on their board. So with that, guys, I'm Billy Embody. This has been the After Stangs Show, live from Shug's Bagels in Mockingbird Plaza. We're here every home game, post game, and we're looking forward to doing this all season long. So appreciate Shugs. Check them out. After hours starts at 6 p.m. Central. You can order your bagels and get it going. Appreciate you guys for listening. Thanks for being with us and submitting some questions as well. So we will catch you guys next week on another edition of the After Stangs Show.